I'm Maiji Mary Huang from Now Recharging, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's May 17th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards the betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with Maiji Mary Huang about Now Recharging at TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Maiji Mary is a Taiwanese-Canadian artist and writer based out of Toronto. Her comics, zines, and poetry incorporate themes of Eastern philosophy and mythology and everyday human experiences. She's the creator of Now Recharging, a slice-of-life webcomic about a sheep-loving android who is bad at math and worried about non-existence. Her work has been published in Canada and Japan. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Maiji Mary Huang about Now Recharging at TCAF 2021. So, Maiji Mary Huang, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
This is a tough question. I honestly don't remember, but I think it's actually because my parents owned a manga rental store back in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. So I was surrounded by comics as a kid. I was literally crawling all over the bookshelves. But if I had to think about it, just, thinking back, doing a bit of time traveling in my head, I think there's three series that probably stand out in my mind the most. And I guess they would qualify as being some of the earliest. One is Candy Candy, which is a historical shoujo manga, and it's set, I think, in early 20th century America. And it follows the adventures of this orphan girl. The second is probably The Chef, which is a seinen manga. And I think of it as like Gordon Ramsay crossed with Osamu Tezuka's Blackjack. And the third is probably Saint Seiya, which is maybe the most well-known of the three that I just listed. And Saint Seiya is a very popular shonen manga. It's still going on today in different spin-offs and iterations. And it was brought to North America as, I think, Knights of the Zodiac.
Oh, okay.
So those are... Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are three very different, but sure. Very memorable series from my childhood, for sure.
Good. So those are great books back then, but I'm wondering who influences your work today? Who are you reading now?
Oh, man. I always feel like everybody whose paths cross with mine, like even just, people who aren't creators necessarily, but people I meet give me ideas and, and perspectives on things, what they know, what they care about. And I feel like, I really believe that saying that storytellers are observers of life, and that just unconsciously, subconsciously goes into my work. In terms of series that I'm really following today, one is Yoshinaga Fumi. Hopefully I've got her name right. Yoshinaga Fumi's Oku. It's sort of like a parallel universe, historical Japan series where it takes place in a world where there's been an epidemic, essentially, that has wiped out most of the male population. So history is basically reversed, where a lot of the roles that would have been taken by men were taken by women. It's a really fascinating alternate universe science fiction kind of story. I'm also following One Punch Man, which is a very well-known shonen series. Yeah. It's so clever and really, really inspiring. And it also it's living that webcomic Cinderella dream too, right? So definitely as a webcomic creator, it gets me very excited. But it does so many clever things with storytelling and character depictions and just character archetypes. And I get a kick out of that. I could probably go on, but
that's great.
I feel like that's true for most creators.
That's good. Good. So we're here talking in the context of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So I'm wondering if you have any favorite convention or festival moments you can share.
Man, there's a lot. Toronto and TCAF itself is certainly one of my favorites. Just being able to be there, meeting creators, hang out with them and hang out with friends and people that you see over and over again.
So I wonder if you could talk a bit about the projects, books that you're exhibiting at TCAF, maybe a bit about maybe what they're about and maybe the origins of them as well.
Sure. Probably the main project I'm showcasing at TCAF is Now Recharging, and that is my own webcomic. It is I guess I would describe it as a science fiction slice of life, and it basically takes place in a world where it's not that different from our own world, except sentient robots are an accepted thing. And the main character is a little robot who loves sheep and is bad at math and worried about non-existence, and they're trying to get a job and find their way in the world. So it's basically a charming, gentle exploration of life and living in existential crises. And where it came from is a little bit of an existential crisis of my own. I'm definitely one of those people who tends to think way too much about everything, and I've always been an existential fighter. And a few years back, I had a particularly intense bout of it where it didn't really affect my ability to do things on a day-to-day basis, but I was definitely feeling like a robot going through the motions of life. And just kind of follow that thread. I think with a lot of creators, we certainly use storytelling, use creating art as a way of dealing with challenges and frustrations and stresses. And so I just kind of followed that thread of that chain of thought and created Emmy the android, who is a little robot who ponders a lot about the same things about the meaning of life and is there anything behind it, but also having to deal with day-to-day realities. So I really just wanted to create something that was comforting, but also not shying away from talking about these things.
Right. Very good. I want to change gears here just slightly and talk about the tools that you use to create your art. I wonder if you could talk about what do you use?
I actually work a lot in traditional media. Ink and watercolor are probably my main mediums. So for Now Recharging, even though it's a science fiction story, I do most of the work in traditional. So pencil sketching, thumbnailing, that's all done obviously traditionally. And then the actual inking, I use a brush pen to create really organic lines. And then I use watercolor on top of that. And then the final pages, of course, are scanned and edited on the computer, but it's primarily just color retouching, cleaning all those things that you get on the scans, and then doing text, of course, on top. But most of the work is done with traditional media.
Oh, that's interesting, because you would think with a technology-based webcomic that you'd be focused more on the digital tools, so it's a juxtaposition. Interesting.
That's right, yeah. I do still enjoy digital media, and I actually got back into it since the pandemic started, just coming back and using a lot of software. But certainly over the last few years, not the last years, but over the period of time of just working on art, I have found traditional media for me personally to be much more relaxing. So I think that's kind of where I gravitated towards, and also recreating a lot of the things that I found really inspiring in terms of East Asian art and incorporating that into my work. So I definitely love seeing sort of the interplay between traditional and digital, because ultimately they're all tools, and it's really inspiring to see what people can come up with when you blend those worlds.
Sure, makes sense. So traditionally at conventions, you get a lot of visitors to your table, and sometimes people come up and ask for advice for making their own comic books. I wonder if you would give any advice, any specific advice to someone who might want to get started making their own.
There's definitely a lot of things that come to mind. One of them is, I think, especially when people are starting out, and because we have social media nowadays, and it's easy for you to really polish what you show to the world and to show just certain sides of what you do and what you create. I think it's really important for people starting out to know that every creator makes mistakes and makes things that they hate and has a frustrating time creating things, and it can often feel like a slog. And I think people need to know that that's totally normal and to not feel discouraged because of that. Sometimes it can be very romantic to think that we're all just bursting with ideas, and the reality is actually ideas are very simple, and the hard part is the discipline to get through that slog and to make things.
Right.
So I always do want people to know, especially when you're starting out, and you feel like, wow, I'll never make anything worthwhile. Everything I do is garbage. To know that, for better or for worse, those feelings are totally normal. And even if you've been doing it for years, for decades, that can still arise and it can still happen. And it's the experience. The experience is when you know that this is normal, and then you get through it. You just by plowing through it. And every single time it gets a little bit easier, but I don't think that'll ever really completely go away.
Okay, very good. So we've been talking about Now Recharging, which is an ongoing webcomic. I wonder if you have any other projects that you can talk about. What's coming up next?
I'm doing a lot of illustration stuff. So I've been working on some illustration series that have been going on for a number of years now, and hopefully the end will be in sight this year or next year, although it's probably going to be next year. I've been doing one based on the tale of Genji, so illustrating various characters and themes from that work. It's a very personally inspiring novel for me. So that is obviously not comics related, but I also recently joined the Spider Forest webcomic collective last year, and that group does a lot of really neat projects together, including anthologies. So I'm working on a story for an upcoming anthology, hopefully coming out soon. And that group actually is also exhibiting at TCAF, and they have some of the past anthologies that are really exciting there. And that collective actually has creators from all over the world with many different genres. So seeing what they create and seeing how all of it comes together into a thematic anthology is very cool.
It is, yeah. We've just, believe it or not, been talking to some members of the Spider Forest Collective the last few times, so that's great.
Fantastic.
Glad you're part of it. That's good stuff. So, also at conventions, in addition to networking and chatting with people, it's about buying books. So I'm wondering, where would you send people to buy your books?
Probably the best place is my website. Right now, because of the pandemic, obviously shipping is a bit of a challenge, I think, for everyone. So most of my works are available through online downloads. So you can get them as PDFs. You can read them on your own. And most of my works are also available free to read online. I definitely feel very fortunate to be in a position where I can do that. So definitely, if you're able to support me, great. If you're not, reading them online is always awesome. And I sometimes do have copies in local shops like the Guiling, Silver Snail, Page and Panel. And actually, the very first printing of Now Recharging was available in Strange Adventures a few years back when I visited Halifax. Although
great. Yeah.
It probably isn't anymore. But it's a great comic shop, and you should still check it out.
Sure. So where can people find out more about you online, about your current and future projects?
So online, nowrecharging.com is probably the easiest and most obvious place to find my webcomic work. And my personal art site is humangray.com, so HUMANGRAY. It's an anagram of Mary Huang. And the usual social media sites. So I'm on Twitter, Tumblr, Pillow Fort, which I'm very excited is back. You can read all my walls of text and overthinking there. My username is Maiji there, and on Instagram, I'm humangray.
Very good. Well, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
It is an honor to be able to make work, to be able to make art, and to share that with people. So I really appreciate, all the readers out there and all the people who I encounter who continue to inspire me. So thank you all so much for that opportunity. And please do check out Toronto Comic Arts Festival. And there are so many amazing creators out there. I'm sure there will be something to inspire anybody. Definitely recommend it.
Thanks to Maiji Mary for the chat. You can discover more about Maiji Mary on Twitter at MAIJI and on Instagram at humangray. She's also online at nowrecharging.com and humangray.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.